Happy Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to my kitchen. I'm Chef Char Nolan, one of the chef instructors here at Rouxbe. Thank you so much for coming to my live event. We have some great questions this week and some fun information to share. I think that, I don't know where you live, but for several days now, we have had nothing but rain, rain, rain. And when I set up my kitchen, usually I have to cover all of the curtains with black curtains so that the room is not over bright. And I was convinced today that I wouldn't have to put any blinders on or anything. But about an hour ago, the sun came out and the sun is bursting beautifully. So happy Tuesday. And maybe when we're finished, I'm going to go out for a good bike ride. So I hope everyone is well. We've got some great questions. And I think my only one piece of Rouxbeism that I wanted to discuss today was photos. Whatever program you're in, your photos mean the world to us when we are grading your papers. A good photo is the best way to showcase your work. So I'm asking for no shadows and make sure that there is adequate light on the photo. When I was a student at Rouxbe, sometimes I did my food at night and then I would refrigerate it and would wake up in the morning and knew exactly when the sunlight was going to hit my side porch, and I would replate the food and take it in natural light, and the food would look delicious because you got to highlight it and my instructors got to see that. So I'm encouraging you, you don't have to be a food photographer, but I'm encouraging you to take the best photos that you can take so that we can see the best of your work. Because a photo is worth 2 points on an assignment, and you would not want to have those points deducted because the photo was of poor quality or grade. So that's the only thing I have to say today, but we'll get right into the questions. And the first one is from Lydia, who has a question about planning your meals, staying on a plan. And I think that this is where I say to everyone, do your best, because sometimes we have lofty goals for ourselves. When I was a coach at Engine 2 back in the beginnings of Rip Esselstyn's presence on the internet, I would always say to people, do your best, make what you know. So it's not a time to think about extravagant kinds of menus to make, but something simple. And what I find very helpful is a calendar that might look something like this, that has days of the week. It's got a little space here that I use for a grocery list. I don't think lofty. I think what I've batch cooked, if I have made 5 Japanese sweet potatoes and they are in the refrigerator, I know that they're going to be a really easy meal to make. And all I need to do is heat one or eat it cold and maybe put some salsa on it and have a grain and a big salad, and I'm good to go. So it doesn't mean that you have to cook every single night, which might take a lot of time from the busy day that you may have had. So I suggest to first make your list of what you plan to eat during the week and then draw a grocery list from that. And that seems to work really well. And if, in fact, you end up going to get a salad at Chipotle, but it's not what was on your list, it's not the worst thing that's going to happen because you managed to get their tofu sofrito and it was actually very, very good. So be gentle with yourself, make what you like. And I'll jump ahead for 1 second, but next month on June 10th, when I have my live event, our guest speaker is going to be Dr. Rouxbe Shaw. She is a practicing pediatrician in Stanford, California. And in fact, she was a Rouxbe guest in 2017. So we thought we'd bring her back for sort of like a refresh. But one of her areas of expertise is meal planning. So I would suggest to mark your calendar for Tuesday, June the 10th at 11 a.m. Pacific time or 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern time so that you can catch my interview with Dr. Shaw. We have met before. She's absolutely delightful, and she has very pragmatic ways to approach the kitchen, to make nutrient-dense meals, and to feel success in the kitchen when you are embracing a plant-based diet or you've lived this way and you just need to have a little reset on getting organized. And I have to say, that sometimes I need to get reorganized too, and I need to have a little reset. So I'm very excited that she's coming. And if you look in the queue, you will see that recently she was featured as a Rouxbe grad, and you can see some of her beautiful food and read about some of her philosophies. But I'm excited that she's coming. So meal planning, make it easy, make it fun. And we do have a course. It only has about 20 assignments in it. It's called Budget Foods. It talks a lot about batch cooking, pre-planning, etc. And the link is in this queue, so you might find that helpful as a resource as well. So that's my recommendation for that. And you know what? That is a great question, because I see that a lot when I am reviewing assignments, that people will say, I'm so glad that I have this course because I can plan my weekly meals from my assignments. But when school is finished at Rouxbe, you might feel as though you need to have a little reinforcement. So I think planning with Dr. Char will be a really fun and good thing to do. So our next question is from Denise, and Denise had a very good question. She is new to whole food plant-based cooking, and she wants to veer away from using alcohol in her cooking. So there are a couple of ways that you can do this. One is that you can go to the grocery store and buy a non-alcoholic wine if you're still looking for that same type of flavor in your cooking. I don't do that, and I'm going to show you what I do and give you a couple of other examples. A good vinegar is a must in anyone's plant-based kitchen. So this is a white vinegar. It's a cucumber melon. It has a very nice fragrance and aroma to it, and it's not too acidic. And this is some Wonder beet juice. It's a product from Turkey. I happen to keep it in the fridge because lots of times I will use it to make a salad dressing. And what you're going to do is take about 2 tablespoons of the beet juice, and you're going to add a drop of the vinegar because you don't want this to be overly acidic. And then you're going to make a red wine substitute. And it works very, very well. If you're wanting to use a white wine substitute, you could use apple juice with a drop of the same vinegar, a nice white balsamic I would recommend, but you can even use a white grape vinegar. And it's just kind of like what you did in high school when you were in chemistry lab. Do as you oughta, add acid to water. So you're going to put the juice in first and then add a couple of drops of the vinegar of your choice. There are endless possibilities. I'm also a really big fan of using stock. I love a good homemade vegetable stock. I don't have to think about it. It's already there for me to deglaze. You can use a low sodium tamari or a low sodium soy sauce, and maybe put a drop of vinegar, but just a drop. I have sometimes reviewed assignments from students who will use 1/4 cup of vinegar, and aside from having your house have this very different aroma, the mushrooms will taste very, very acidic, and that's not what you're looking for. So do a Google search and see if you find something that you like, but about 2 tablespoons or 1/4 cup of a juice that you like, and then a drop of a really good quality vinegar. And I think that you will enjoy. That's how I cook my mushrooms most of the time. So very good question, Denise. This is from Sue M., who has a question about what corn flour do I use. I am a huge, gigantic fan of Bob's Red Mill. I mean, how much of a nice gentleman was he that he made all of his employees owners of their company? That says so much about his heart and his soul and what he thought and how he valued his employees. So I like to buy gluten-free products from Bob because, as we've discussed previously, he does have a separate processing plant for all of his gluten-free items. So, for example, his masa arena that he uses for you to make tortillas with does not have dehydrated lime, nor does it have folic acid in it, but he does cook the corn in acidulated water using lime. So with that said, to me, that says a lot about the integrity. I've traveled extensively throughout Central America and have eaten many, many, many tortillas made from masa seca. I don't think it's done anything harmful to me, but if you're looking for something that's organic and delicious, I would definitely go with the Bob's Red Mill. So that's my little pitch. And I do want to say, sometimes I will use a small amount of any organic flour, and I will use a mashed sweet potato and blend them together to make a really nice dough. And actually, they make very, very good tortillas. The ticket, of course, is to have a really good tortilla press and make sure that you're using a non-stick paper between the layers. So that's my recommendation for the masa seca, and good luck. I hope your recipe comes out well. Certainly timely with having experienced Cinco de Mayo yesterday. So this is a very good question from Esty, and I'm a yogurt maker. Sometimes my batches come out wonderfully, and sometimes I have to say, well, what did I do that this didn't come out as creamy as I wanted it to? So the first thing is, and this is not a commercial for Califia Farms, but you'll notice that it says organic. Organic is good. I like organic. But here are the ingredients: water, organic almonds, and sea salt. You have to avoid using any kind of plant milk that has carrageenan in it or guar gum or that long, long list that sometimes you see. So having an organic, clean listed milk is extremely, extremely important. And then you want to have a good quality vegan probiotic. You need to have a probiotic. Sometimes I will use yogurt that I have as the starter. You don't need to have a yogurt maker. You can make it in your oven at a very low temperature. You want to make sure that you're using tempered glass to make them in. All glass that you put your yogurt in should be tempered glass for the best results. And have it cook for about 13 to 15 hours. I don't own an Instapot. I actually gave it away. But you can also make it in the Instapot. I cook everything on top of the stove and then pour it into my jars. So I've given you a resource with Remy Park, who is a gluten-free vegan blogger whose website is wonderful, and it is a plethora of information. So you might want to look at that recipe if that's something that you want to use. The other thing about making your own yogurt is that it's very much more cost efficient than if you went and bought a small container of Kite Hill almond, which is considered one of the better ones to use, for $2.29 for 8 ounces. So I think we're all trying to be a little bit more cost efficient these days. So making your own yogurt is a great way to begin. So that was a very good question. And you'll see the recipe from Veggiekins and Remy Park. Check out her website. It's really beautifully done, and it's very, very informative. So there we go. So Lana B wants to know what the healthiest non-dairy yogurt is. I avoid anything with coconut in it because of its high fat content. And there are many yogurts that are a blend of cashews and coconut, but they still have about 9 grams of fat per 8 ounce serving. I'm a big fan of almond yogurt. That's why I have almond milk. And Kite Hill, to me, makes a really good one. And I have to say, the first time that I ever had plant milk yogurt, I thought I was going to die because I was expecting it to have the same texture and the same mouthfeel as the yogurts that I'd been eating since I was in the 4th grade. So I think that you have to start off with a recipe that you like, with a recipe that's easy to follow, and sometimes walk into it. I also, if I don't use Califia, Rip Esselstyn has a great plant strong milk line, and there is walnut milk, there's almond milk. His almond milk makes very, very good yogurt as well because it's nice and creamy. And again, it only has 3 ingredients. So I think a 3 ingredient plant milk is the best way to go. So there we go. All right. So Subi, you must be reading my mind because when I reviewed this question, I thought, oh, I should tell Sue B about my method of, I just forgot to add it. So, because lots of times we may forget to add an ingredient to something, but it still comes out, and that generally is my luck. So, regarding that specific recipe, I would use a room temperature almond or good quality, peanut butter that is unsalted and is not chunky, chunky peanut butter or whatever. Use that at room temperature and add a little bit more to give you that fat feel that you want to have to your ganache. And as I remember, that's exactly what I did when I made my assignment. So, and it worked. So there you go. I think that that's a really good, smart question. And we have a question from Maria. Maria, it's always great to see you. I always love seeing your questions. Thanks so much for tuning in today. So oatmeal is in the press a lot because, it used to just be that there was one kind of oatmeal. Many of us grew up on old-fashioned oats that we cooked for ourselves or maybe our mom or someone. And now there's such a plethora from steel cut, from old-fashioned. None of us want to ever use any of the instant oatmeals because they just aren't as nutritious for you, quite simply. So I have my rice cooker out here today, because I use my rice cooker for making steel cut oats. And there's a little button on there that says steel cut oats, and they come out beautifully and they come out delicious. And before I put them in there, I wash them about 3 or 4 times to get any surface particles, dirt, whatever. And when you do soak your oats overnight, you do reduce some of the phytic acid, which there are pros and cons about. The other thing you can do is just simply make overnight oats in a container with oats and your favorite plant milk. And I always like to add chia seeds. I know some people, when they make overnight oats, like to fill it with raisins and blueberries and whatnot, but I keep it plain and simple because when I wake up in the morning and I have a bowl, I might want to add a banana or add some blueberries or whatever. Soaking is not mandatory, but I think if you're using steel cut oats, the best thing to do is to make certain that they are super clean and rinsed really, really well, just like you do when you are making rice. So there we go. And also there is the link for the budget batch cooking class. And I do believe there's a free trial with that. So you might want to look into it because it's fun. And I always like to say this. When people leave Rouxbe, and I'm using myself as an example, but I hear this from everyone, that all of a sudden they feel a gap or a void in their day because they're not running to market to pick up an ingredient, or they're not cleaning their kitchen so they can get ready to make a delicious looking mise en place. So we always encourage students to come back, even if it's to take a course like the budget cooking, or we do see a lot of students who have been in Forks Over Knives and then decide that they want to dig in a little bit deeper, and they come to the Plant Pro course. So it's always fun to see students who return. So Chef Fran to text me today. She has a previous appointment. She said to say hello to everyone. And she wants to know what my favorite meals are to eat during the summer. Now, I will say Philadelphia itself as a city was actually built on a swamp. So it gets very, very humid in Philadelphia. More humid than some of the temperatures I've experienced when I've lived as a Peace Corps volunteer in Brazil or as a missionary in Honduras or wherever I go. Philly is really, really hot. So I turn to salads because salads are simple and easy. And the Rouxbe tunaless salad is the best recipe because you can make a triple batch of that. And you can use it in a salad. You can use it in a sandwich. You can make a pasta salad. And instead of having a tuna noodle pasta salad, you can have a tuna-less pasta salad. So anything that prevents me from having to turn on the stove or the oven, I do rely on using an air fryer if I want to cook a sweet potato or a baked potato because it doesn't give out too much heat. But anything, I love a salad, friend. So we can go out and have salads together soon. Suzanne is going to Sweden. And interestingly, We have a relationship with the Veg Chef School. It's a vegan culinary school in Sweden, and we interact with them regularly. And from what I understand, there's even a New York bagel shop in Stockholm that everyone seems to love. In terms of the space, I do understand, Suzanne, that there is not a lot of space because kitchens are so small. So all you really need to have is a good knife and a good cutting board. And I think that you'll be able to enjoy some of the summer bounty that I see our students using in their recipes. And I think people go shopping regularly. There are many brands that you will recognize in terms of vegan or plant-based products, and enjoy the beautiful fresh produce and the very, very, very long and beautiful days. So I think your one pot, your pan, your knife, your bowl, and a couple of tools is all that you need. If I would add one thing to that, I would add an immersion blender, or a hand mixer, as it sometimes is called, just in case you wanted to make a beautiful soup and puree it, or you wanted your salad dressing to be extra creamy or whatever. So a stick blender would be the one thing that I would add to that list. So I hope you get to visit Veg Chef. It's a really beautiful, beautiful experience. And let's see. This is from Connie. Hello, Connie. How do you make baked tortilla chips from corn tortillas? Hers were hard and they were tough. So you want to cut them evenly. I find cutting them with a pizza cutter into 8 pieces, so they're a nice size. I put them into a 400 or 425 degree oven. I cook them for 5 minutes. At the 2.5 minute point, I turn them over with some tongs and then cook them, and then take one out to test. And if it snaps and breaks and makes a familiar sound that kind of registers with the tortilla, then I know they're done. I've also put them in the air fryer. I find they burn much too quickly. So spacing the cut pieces out is a perfect way to cook them. I would suggest doing that. Oh, this is from Randall B. Hello, Randall B. How are you today? So where can you find a good cheddar cheese-like recipe? We have one in our curriculum, but a good vegan cheese comes with using, in this case, cashews that have been soaked properly, where you're also using lemon juice and nutritional yeast and water. Those are the primary ingredients. And then letting it rest and cool completely. When I make vegan cheeses, I let them sit overnight. I'll recommend a great book to you. It's called This Cheese is Nuts, and the author, I believe, is Julie, Piatt. It was written in 2017. She has a great recipe for cheddar cheese. I think, here's my one thing. I don't ever buy vegan cheeses in the grocery store because they are loaded with fat. If you're going to eat something that has that much fat in it, it's not really worth it. Plus, it also has a lot of preservatives. So I say to find a recipe that you like, or get the book by Julie and see what you work with that creates something that you really enjoy. I will say that I sometimes make a cheddar cheese, and it comes out more like a very hard spread than it does a hard cheese. So there are many ways to make vegan cheeses, and I think looking at that book might be a good way for you to go. And I'm thinking that we are, here we go. I have a couple of, let's see, what time is it right now? It is 2:25. We have a couple of more minutes, so let me take a look at these questions here. So Kathleen is asking a question about cooking a diet that would be beneficial for lowering cholesterol. So if you read Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease by Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn, the book was written in 2009. And Esselstyn wrote these recipes. And in 2009, the horizon of everything that was plant-based was very different than it is today, because there were no processed foods back then. So I think avoiding any processed foods and making everything from scratch is probably the best thing that you can do. So we're talking lots of greens, lots of grains, and legumes. And those three ingredients there are reported results about people's cholesterols dropping exponentially. I'm not a physician, I'm not a registered dietitian, but if you read those books, I think you would find that very helpful. Diane has a question about kefir, and she's looking. There are vegan kefirs out on the market. You have to read the ingredients. If you're going to make yogurt, you can also make your own kefir. So I think that that might be something to look into. I have never made my own kefir. I've never been a fan of its texture or consistency, but that might be something fun to look into. This is from Joan B., who wants to know if I have a favorite way of making corn chowder cold. And it's cold and drizzly in Maine today, and she's craving corn chowder. She hasn't made one since going plant-based. So here is the trick about making a creamy soup. And if you're using corn, you would want to cook the corn with the potato in the water. So you're going to cook a peeled, quartered potato, and then that potato is going to become creamy when you puree it. Now, what I do when I make creamed soups is I will braise a couple of carrots, a yellow onion, and a potato, sometimes maybe a parsnip, and I will braise them in the oven. And then what happens at the end is that you have this beautifully caramelized concoction, for lack of a better word, and then I will add that to make a creamy soup. So make your soup with all of your ingredients. You might have a beautiful mise en place that, of course, would have celery, carrot, and onions, which is your basic mirepoix. And then what other ingredients you have, and then you will take the potato out and cook it with blend it with about a cup of the stock or broth that is in the pan. And then you'll find that you're going to have a beautifully creamed corn soup or chowder, as you're saying. You can add some plant milk to it, and you can play with the texture and consistency. You could add a little bit of flour with some water in it as well. So I try to stay away from adding flour. So for me, the potato works really, really well. It seems pretty chilly. I've been following the weather around the country, and it looks like there's a lot of rain. So Kate has a question that will probably be a better one to ask Chef Fran, but I will say that in terms of baking and not using an oil substitute for baking, what will give me moisture and texture without compromising flavor? All of my baking is without oil. And what I do is the nanosecond that it comes out of the oven, I cover it with a plate. So let's say that it's in a baking dish or whatever, and I'll cover it with a plate so that the moisture stays in the cake. That's my little trick. It seems to work for me. I have eaten cake made by Ann Esselstyn and Jane Esselstyn and Fran Costigan, who has a delicious no oil recipe in her vegan chocolate cookbook, and they come out great. So it's using good flour, it's following directions, and it's just having fun with what you make. But I want to say that my own baking, I always describe it as being whole food plant-based and very wholesome, because you can see grains and you can see raisins and cranberries or whatever I'm using in it. So I think that we have to move away. I always tell people we have to move away from what we knew, because there's a new cake on the horizon, and it's one that is made without dairy, without eggs, without butter, but it is very doable. And I know that you can do that and make a gorgeous, gorgeous cake. So there we go. The last one is from Melanie P, and I'll say good afternoon to you, Melanie. Where she's living doesn't have a proper oven, but a convection microwave oven. It isn't great for complex, long time baking. Will this be a real limitation? Will this be a limitation in the course? I don't know which course you're talking about, because in the Plant Pro and Forks Over Knives, you're going to bake some tofu, and I think there are, if you're in Frank, okay, I'm going to say a good convection oven will do the trick for what the recipes are. So there is, I'm thinking of this wonderful roasted tofu recipe that we have, and other things, roasting carrots, proper pan placement is so important. So I'm going to say no, but I would also say that when I am doing, creating your narratives, I would write this food was made in a microwave convection oven combo, so that it kind of sets the tone. And remember that when you're doing those roasting assignments, that it's really good to say, I baked these carrots for 23 minutes at 425 degrees, because that information really helps us understand why the caramelization is so good, or why there isn't caramelization, or whatever. So that's a great question, Melanie. And if you have any questions, you can always email Student Services, or you can email one of the chef instructors. It's always our first name at rouxbe.com. So I think that these have been some great questions. Next month, we'll meet with Dr. Reshma Shah. You've got some great tips for sauteing without alcohol. And it's always a pleasure. I love getting up on the day of the live event, and I love reading all of the questions, and I see how thoughtful you are in the process of what you bring to this table. And before we close, the one thing that dawned on me this morning was, I should have asked a couple of you to comment about meal planning for the week, but maybe we can do that at another time. I think that we are good to go. Lots of great assignments coming in. Have fun. Enjoy what you do. I will see you on Tuesday, June the 10th. On behalf of all of the instructors here at Rouxbe, thank you so much for tuning in. And this is Char Nolan. I'm signing off from Philadelphia for today. Bye now.